was an old Model A jack, and me being only 4 years old, it was my job to run the pin in and out of the hole. Used my finger for the pin, and it didn't quite work.
It was seeing race cars go down the freeway or down the highway on an open trailer.
With my dad, he always took time to show up to my softball games. Sorry.
And a lot I see my grandpa working here. He works with cars, and sometimes he says hi.
Like the pine trees lining the winding road, I've got a name, I've got a name. Like the singing bird and the croaking toad, I've got a name, I've got a name.
In a world where things are cheap, disposable, and temporary, it's refreshing to find enduring qualities like integrity, honesty, and pride in your work. Terry's Repair stands as a testament to time-honored values passed down from generation to generation. As the shop marks its 50th anniversary in 2026, this short documentary explores how a small garage founded back in 1976 evolved from a single service bay into a cornerstone of the Owatonna community in southern Minnesota.
Talking about life growing up, I grew up on a farm. We had cows, pigs, chickens, ducks. I was the youngest of 14. So it was a busy place always. And of course, the older ones were already grown up and gone from the house. I was an uncle by the time I was a year old. And of course, my dad knew nothing but work. We never took vacations. And of course, on the farm, that many years back, it was nothing but manual labor for almost everything you did. You know, baling hay. I had to haul the milk to town before I could go to school in the morning. So I had to load up about 10 to 12 cans of milk in the back of the pickup and haul it to the creamery. And so my childhood memories are a lot of work. We had a lot of fun, but it was an awful lot of work too. Yeah. The scar, yeah. that missing finger.
Tell me that story.
Well, two of my brothers, my older brother that stayed home on the farm to run the farm basically, my dad and him were milking cows, and the other two brothers decided we should jack up the elevator and take the flat tire off of it. And it was an old Model A jack, and me being only 4 years old, it was my job to run the pin in and out of the hole. Well, I dropped the pin in the grass, and it's dark out, and I can't find it, and they're hollering at me, hurry up, it's getting heavy. So I used my finger for the pin, and it didn't quite work. They ran one direction, and I went to the house. And you should have seen all my sisters run when I walked in the door, and the blood was spurting out with every heartbeat. So I didn't cry at all until I asked my mother how long it would take for it to grow back, and that's when I started to cry. Well, I guess my desire to start a business it probably started at a young age. My brother Robert on the home farm, he was almost like a dad to me. He taught me a lot of repairing farm equipment, and he was very handy with a welder and for mechanical work and everything. And then working in a gas station, that was a little more, and that's where I decided to go to vocational school for mechanics, and then when I moved to Owatonna, I got a job with the city of Owatonna as a mechanic, and while working there, I was fixing people's cars at night. Nobody in town worked on Volkswagens, and so one week I rebuilt a Zamboni engine, which was a Volkswagen engine, and I was also rebuilding a bus engine out of a Volkswagen at the same time. So in 1 week, I made more money than I did when I think a month working for the city. And I guess that was when I made the decision that maybe it's time to think about moving on. And I started out working out of just 2-stall garage attached to my house. And luckily, my house was right next to the industrial park, and I got the opportunity to buy the land that the shop sits on now. You know, and then once I decided to build the shop, well, it's getting past the building inspector, getting the building permit, and that was one of the biggest challenges I had the whole time. I mean, the inspector just argued with me over little things, and once I got the building permit, then things went along pretty good. And but I don't consider myself a real carpenter, but you know, I had a masonry guy build the block walls, and then I had somebody come out with a crane and set the rafters, had help with that, but then I sheeted the roof and put the shingles on myself. And my oldest brother had the gravel truck and things to haul fill in, and just that even helped a lot with having, I remember him and others helped for one whole weekend hauling in fill and packing it underneath the floor of the shop. And even when I built the office, I had a lot of help, and that wasn't cement wall or brick walls, block walls. So I had a lot of help with doing that, and I did a lot of that myself. That was always after work, you know, and weekends, of course. And money wasn't, you know, it was short, and so all the help you could get.
One of the things I remember on Saturdays, we either would take trips to Miskin's auto salvage, and Dad would pull off parts, and then after that, the treat was we'd go to the pool hall, or back then Jack's was still open. It was a little bar and grill, and it was a huge treat to us because fast food back then wasn't really heard of, so it was great.
The shop was my playground. You know, like for farmers, you had a manure pile. Well, for us, we had a scrap iron pile. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think about all the years of scrap iron, and I don't know, I assume just about everyone else in my family talks about scrap iron, but like we're scrappers at heart.
And the same thing on Saturdays, you know, once a month or however often it was. We'd load up scrap iron, get greasy dirty, and our treat was we'd make a few bucks and then go out for a burger again.
Grandpa was still working at this time, so he would do like part-time. I think he'd do 3 days a week or something like that. And on his days off, me and my sister would we'd pull all the scrap metal out of the shed and out of the area over there. We'd haul it all up, bring it down to the recycling center, get paid for all of the scrap metal, and then we'd always go out to like lunch after that.
When we were little, we'd help like haul scrap iron. My grandpa would usually come and help us. He'd bring like the trailer over, and we'd throw all the brake rotors into the back of the trailer, and kind of, you know, hard labor for kids.
Yeah, that's where I grew up. I tell people now I didn't really go too far, you know, that, but it's okay. Yeah, so it was, and even after my parents divorced when we were in 5th grade, my mom we still lived there. So we got to see my dad every day, you know, which was, we were excited. There was a sidewalk that went from that place to the shop. That's why the back door is over there, was because Dad would walk to lunch, or, well, he would walk to lunch, but I mean, he would literally walk to work. And I don't think we realized how how good we had it with him being able to have lunch every day, to be able just always there. And you know, when you're a kid and your parents are always around, you kind of want some of that freedom, some of that space. But you know, looking back, to be able to have lunches, to be able to have supper, even though he was working so much. You know, back in the early days before we built on this current location, you know, there were Volkswagens lined the driveway, and I look back at some of those old things and I think, oh, there's a Volkswagen thing. That thing's worth a fortune today. But yeah, there was always cars around. There was always people around. That used to drive my mom crazy. And folks didn't know that we were eating supper, and they'd come knock on the door to drop off keys. But yeah, there wasn't that separation. I mean, there isn't that separation for us now when we're at church, when we're at the grocery store, when we're out. And I think people respect that a little bit more. We try to kind of distance ourselves when we're out, but we were literally right there all the time.
If I go back to 1976, would I do this all over again? I think yes, I would, without a doubt. I never was short on work, for one thing, and being your own boss has a lot of advantages. The only probably bad part is the amount of hours.
I guess the biggest thing for me growing up with my dad, he always took time to show up to my softball games. Sorry. No, he just, it's a huge commitment to have this type of business and to take care of people and know that what we're doing and why it's worth it. And but like I said, he always took time to come to my softball games.
Even with as busy as he was,
Right.
he made a point to do that.
Yep. Thanks.
You asked what got me into racing? It was seeing race cars go down the freeway or down the highway on an open trailer.
Oh, rapid roar, that stock car boy, he too much to believe. You know he always got an extra pack of cigarettes rolled up in his t-shirt sleeve. He got a tattoo on his
Well, my brother Jim raced for 1 year, and then he got drafted into the service. And the guy that he worked for at the Standard Oil Station wanted to know if I didn't want a job part-time, and he was a racer. And so between my brother, I guess he knew that he wasn't going to race when he got home from the service, so he left his engine behind and his wheels and tires. And
Well, he started racing when his brother went into the military. His brother Jim would have raced, went into the military, I think at the end of the Korean War. Or maybe he was just a serviceman. I don't remember. He ended up in Korea, but anyway, so his race car was around. Dad took it, and I assume with permission, but he took it. Started doing a little racing that summer.
1966, the year I graduated, I started racing. Back then you had 16 years old, or 18 years old, I should say. I had to get my mother to sign a waiver, and what she was reluctant to do, but I convinced her, and so that's when I got started. And so,
And how many years did you race then? If you started in 66, how long?
I think I raced for 17 years. Some of the years wasn't full-time, but pretty much full-time most of those years. it was the later years where the cars got so much better, and when I bought a Boughton chassis, that's when I started running much better, and won a few more races back then, but the competition was a lot more too. I'd go to Fairmont and there would be 35 to 40 late model cars there when you pulled in the pits, and that one year I won half the heat races I was in, and I was second in the other half of them. I won some features and several trophy dashes, and a lot more competition, but that was a track that I always really ran good at.
I don't remember the first days, but I remember, you know, in pictures, I remember the pit crew. I mean, I can visually see them all. That was our weekends. We went racing pretty much every weekend. It was a lot of fun. Made a lot of friends. Yeah. I did a couple times get behind the wheel. They had powder puff races at the end of the year, and I got to get in the car twice, I think. It was fun. It was kind of scary. I don't think it's something that I would want to do every weekend, but there again, it was something we looked forward to, went with friends and cousins and had a great time.
That I wanted to be my dad. I always thought my dad was the coolest, the strongest, just the best. And when I would, when I was out and about, people would say that, oh, your dad's the best mechanic. Oh, do you want to be a race car driver like your dad? So from an early age, that was just kind of instilled into me. Was probably 4 or 5 years old when I first remember race cars being around. Dad always drove a late model, so wide tires, big engines. Back then they burnt or used aviation fuel, so that had a completely different smell to it than what your normal, it would have been leaded fuel back then. But so yeah, it was the sound. It was waking up in the middle of the night to the engine running for whatever reason, the smell of it. That's what I remember as a kid. And back then, you had that level of competition, but those guys grew up. Fist fights would settle things, and then they'd go back onto the racetrack. Like nothing else had ever happened. But so growing up around that was kind of impressive, or kind of eye-opening to me. I just, kind of grew up around that. Looking back, things are a little different today. So yeah, there was a handful of I was on my lid 3 or 4 times. Once at Arlington, twice at Fairmont, once at Owatonna, and those are always unsettling because, usually when you're upside down, you've got alcohol, and we always ran methanol. Whenever we were in the modifieds, we were always running methanol. But the bulls are upside down and their fuel's running out of them, and so you're always kind of worried about fire. But probably it was my worst wreck. Down in Fairmont one night, point inversion. So we start in the middle of the heat race or the feature, and I got up and over the top of somebody's tires, and it catapulted the car into the wall up. And this happened coming out of 4, and I ended up coming into 1, and that was a half-mile track, so that was quite a tumble all the way down. And I just remember the car, like I said, it was kind of catapulting end over end, and seeing the darkness, and then every time it would come down, you'd see the stars. I mean, like, just, it was very violent. I know I had a concussion out of it. I had bloodshot. I mean, like, the blood vessels in my eyes were just, it had broke so that, you know, the whites of my eyes were red. You know, we didn't know anything about concussions back then. So, you know, I was in a race car the following weekend, backup car. But it took a year to kind of recover from that, the tailbone, just a lot of things. And now, you know, I don't race. Obviously, I haven't raced in a long time, and I don't necessarily go to the races, but I kind of follow it on YouTube. And I see now just all the safety innovations that have happened in the last, probably since Dale Earnhardt's death. I mean, a lot of people talk about that without his death, racing wouldn't be nearly as safe as it is today. We always had it. We were always really lucky when we took the business over. It was set up. I mean, there was enough money in the bank to pay our bills, where my dad, I mean, he was literally paycheck to paycheck. And he was collecting money. It was those uncomfortable conversations. And I think there was kind of a breaking point. I mean, not really a breaking point, but there was kind of a decision, like, if we wanted to move forward. I mean, my dad wanted to retire, or slow down at least. And it was, it was easy for him. Like, he knew that that's what I wanted to do from a little age, or a young age. So for him, it was easy for him to transition out of it, I think. Mm-hmm. And I think it was easy. He groomed me really well, I think. I mean, because, like I said, the service side, he really taught me how to take care of our customers. Mm-hmm. That it wasn't about the dollar.
Interesting to think back, to try to pinpoint a conversation or a day when we made the decision to take on the shop or start that process. I don't think it was a day. I think it was just a natural transition, but I don't ever remember us feeling pressured at the same time either. It was just what we rolled into. And yeah. I wish I had like a good story for how we made this life-changing decision, but really it just happened kind of organically. You know, what was God doing in my life long ago, preparing me for that support role in this business in our life. And one of my role models, we had family friends that owned McDonald's in Owatonna, and I spent a lot of time with them. And I remember watching Judy Struntz, raise her family and be that supporting role for her husband at McDonald's. And she'd have Post-it, and she drove a big old station wagon, and she had Post-it notes all on the dash. And we always, whenever we went anywhere, we had to stop at the bank on our way. And, you know, she was helping with the business, but also a mom at the same time. And so I watched her do that. Of course, not trying to learn, it just happened. And so I think like, oh, that's actually what I'm doing right now. Whether I'm with our parents that have had a whole bunch of medical stuff that I've needed to be there for, but I still can go to the bank or cover the lunch hours here, or the list is probably like hundreds of things that I've done over the years, whether it was writing radio ads. The kids and I used to do that, and they would record the radio ads at KRFO. But we've painted the building several times. We've mowed the lawn hundreds, thousands of times maybe.
Yeah. Yep.
I just, I enjoy it. I enjoy that role. I wouldn't I wouldn't want Brett's job. He does cars, and I really don't. I couldn't fix a car if my life depended on it. We've joked that we should sometime
Switch roles.
or at least
Yeah.
test me once
Yeah.
to see if I could.
Especially now,
Yeah.
you would do way better. I mean,
Maybe.
you know all the. If you were to reverse your roles and ask yourself the questions that you ask customers
Sure.
before you give me the phone,
Right.
you could probably figure out
I
more than
could
you.
probably diagnose a vehicle, some issues, but I
Yes.
couldn't fix it. And it would be messy, that's for sure. It wouldn't be tidy.
But it would be organized.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I love serving. I mean, that is just, I love helping people, and I just was born that way, and that's what I continue to do, and I love it,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't change it.
You know, when we talk about the God family, that's a little broken when it comes to the business. I forget. I forget how much of an important role God has played in the success of what we have. But Kari is by far at the top of the pyramid, and I don't give her enough credit for that, because she's always there. Like, she's always there for me, no matter what, no matter how crabby I am, no matter what bonehead mistake I've made, what I didn't write down, what I did, like, she is just always there and always willing.
I think one of the interesting things about a small business or any really big thing that people do is you don't necessarily see the work, right? It's easy to see the outcome, the success of a business, but what you don't see is the 90% of the work that went into it. And that is something that I have seen over the years with my grandpa, my dad, my mom, is the amount of work that it requires to make something like this happen. And also the profound impact that that can have on the community, on the people in our lives. So that's been something really cool for me to witness firsthand, because that's something I get to see, right? I see the work, I see the time.
The biggest thing was that it wasn't just about vehicles necessarily. I saw that my dad knew a lot about vehicles. My grandpa knew a lot about vehicles. But something now, as I'm older and I hear about people talking about their professions and talking about how, I wouldn't want my kids to go into that, or I wouldn't want my kids to do what I do. That was something that I never saw with my grandpa and my dad, and then my dad to us. It was something that they did want us to go into. That it was something that they did want to pass on to us, the next generation. It wasn't something that was that they were ashamed of, or that they wanted for the business to keep going down. That's not something that you see very often, that I now realize. It's not something that you see very often, to see a business being passed on to an immediate relative like that.
I don't know, and I think sometimes it's for selfish reasons that I want my kids to take this over to do this or whatever, but.
Sometimes I come visit one of the workers here. Sometimes I see you too. And a lot I see my grandpa working here. He works with cars, and sometimes he says hi.
Like the pine trees lining the winding road, I've got a name, I've got a name. Like the singing bird and the croaking toad, I've got a name, I've got a name. And I carry it with me like my daddy did.
The Hanson family.
That's it. Well done.
All right, good.
Don't hit your head.
I see that.
I won't.